New developments tonight. 325 layoffs announced at Spokane Public Schools after a $31 million budget shortfall. Layoffs floated in Central Valley with $12 million needing to be cut. A financial emergency in Mead. That's the backdrop to a new bill passed in Olympia late this weekend that might help with school funding. Our Hawk Hammer working on that story tonight. Broadly, what the bill does, Hawk, is raise the amount of money school districts can ask taxpayers for. Legislators had put a lid on that when state funding from the McCleary decision went up.
That's the gist of it, Aaron, and what the impacts on this upcoming budget season for those school districts will be is somewhat unclear. School districts like Central Valley telling me that they don't see it making any impact on what they've worked on so far. Spokane Public Schools telling me they're going to dig through all of this, boil it down, and see what they can work on. As you mentioned, the tricky part here is that the bill doesn't go into effect until 2020, so there's going to be a gap when it comes to funding and those layoffs.
The ability to raise $43.6 million over 2 years. A $31 million shortfall That's what Spokane Public Schools says they faced in part when their levies were capped. Now a close vote by the state legislature to raise them back up statewide.
Unsure what it is at this point in time. It was not our first choice to go back to the voters.
School districts would be able to ask voters for up to $2.50 per $1,000 of assessed property value, up from $1.50. The maximum funding per student would be $2,500 in districts of under 40,000 students. That's all but Seattle. Seattle would get $3,000. For smaller districts that may not be able to collect as much money with levies because of lower property value, the state would continue to provide local effort assistance if their levy rate is less than $1.50 per $1,000 in assessed property value to get to the $1,500 in funding per student. Here's the tricky part. This all wouldn't go into effect until 2020. What that means for all of those layoffs in the works, in Spokane, they're still happening, but they may not be permanent.
We're trying to understand the legislature and what that means, whether we have the opportunity to recall some teachers or not. We'll know that probably in the next couple of months as we go through the process.
We reached out to other area school districts. They're saying the same thing. They have to deal with those deficits.
At this time, we have already made those notices out to those folks that are involved. We appreciate the work that the legislature has done, and we will continue to evaluate how that affects us into the future.
So it's heads down and hard work ahead as school districts and their boards adjust and make their budgets.
And once again, they say there's a lot of hard work, a lot of studying up. They've only had this for 2 or so days. I also spoke with the superintendent of Deer Park School District. He says at first glance in reading through this, it's a pretty good thing for them. He says sometimes when school funding decisions are made, it can benefit the property-rich areas and hurt the property-poor areas like Deer Park. He says this bill doesn't seem to do that. He says what it does doesn't hurt anybody. It just opens up options. That's his take. Reporting live, Hawk Hammer, KXLY 4 News.